All right, today we are diving into a topic that's, well, it's really out there. It sits at this fascinating crossroads of ancient belief, modern wellness culture, and some seriously cutting-edge science. We're talking about placenta consumption. Yep, usually in the form of a pill. What started out as a super niche practice has just exploded into the mainstream. So what is actually going on here?
You know, to really get why this trend took off, you have to start with the personal stories. This quote from a parenting forum just gets right to the heart of it. For a lot of people, this is not just some wellness fad. It's this deeply personal, sometimes desperate search for relief from some really scary postpartum challenges. And it's also a powerful statement about having control over your own body.
So how did we even get here? In the next few minutes, we're going to take a journey. First, we'll look at how the placenta pill trend got so big. Then, we're going to put the popular beliefs up against the hard scientific evidence. After that, things get a little weird. We're taking a detour into a bizarre experiment involving young blood. And you'll see how that idea actually led to a standardized alternative, what the animal studies are showing, and finally, how it all makes its way from the lab to the marketplace.
Okay, first things first. How on earth did a practice that was basically on the fringes just a little while ago suddenly become a huge part of the postpartum conversation?
Well, the short answer? Visibility. I mean, when celebrities like Kim Kardashian start talking about their experience with placenta pills, it's suddenly in front of millions and millions of people. You combine that kind of star power with the echo chamber of online parenting groups and social media, and you can see exactly how a niche idea just completely transforms into a mainstream, though, yeah, still very controversial, wellness trend.
Now, what's so fascinating here is how methodical this whole process looks. You know, it's cleaned, sometimes it's steamed, it's dehydrated, ground up, and then packed into these neat little capsules. But, and this is the really crucial part, this is not happening in some sterile, regulated lab. This is a totally unregulated cottage industry, often run by individuals out of their own homes.
So, with so many people jumping on this trend, you've got to ask, what does the actual science say? I mean, do the benefits hold up? This is where what people believe and what the data shows really start to collide.
And this slide really lays out that disconnect perfectly. The claims are compelling, right? Boosts your iron, helps your mood, increases milk supply. But when scientists put it to the test in controlled studies, the results, well, they just weren't there. One study found no real difference in iron levels compared to a placebo that was literally just ground up beef. Other studies found no measurable impact on mood, fatigue, or milk production versus a sugar pill. And beyond the question of whether it even works, there are some pretty serious, documented risks. Because the whole industry is unregulated, there is zero safety standards. This means you have to worry about things like bacterial contamination. In fact, in one case, the CDC actually linked a baby's recurring group B strep infection, which is a really serious illness for an infant, directly to the mother's contaminated placenta pills. And on top of that, there are risks of viruses and even heavy metals, which the placenta can filter out and store during pregnancy.
Okay, now we're going to take a really fascinating turn, because while the direct evidence for placenta pills is pretty weak, a totally different area of research might just explain why this core idea that an organ tied to birth could have rejuvenating powers is so powerful. And it all starts with a very old, very strange experimental technique.
It's a technique called parabiosis. And yeah, it sounds like something straight out of a Frankenstein movie, but it's a real century-old procedure where scientists surgically join two animals together, in this case mice, so they actually end up sharing the same blood supply. It's a wild setup, but it lets researchers see how things floating in the blood of one mouse can affect the other one.
So, in this big, landmark study from Stanford, researchers used this exact technique to ask a really profound question. What happens if you connect an old mouse to a young mouse? Could something in that young blood actually turn back the clock for the old one?
The results were absolutely stunning. The old mouse that got a constant supply of young blood, its brain actually showed real, tangible signs of getting younger. It started growing new brain cells, and it got better at cognitive tasks. And the flip side was just as incredible. When a young mouse was hooked up to old blood, its brain function actually got worse. This was the proof. There are real, powerful factors in our blood that can literally impact the aging process.
And this brings us right back to our original topic, but with a whole new way of looking at it, right? If young blood has these powerful rejuvenating factors, then what about the placenta, an organ that is literally built from scratch to create and sustain a new life? What this research suggests is that the instinct behind eating the placenta might actually have a kernel of scientific truth to it, even if the DIY, unregulated pill method is risky and flawed. So
Could a safe, standardized extract be the real answer here?
And that question leads us directly to the market's response. Companies saw the huge demand created by the DIY trend, but they also saw the obvious safety issues. So they started to develop professionally manufactured, commercial placental supplements.
This chart just lays out the differences perfectly. Instead of using the mother's own placenta in some unregulated setting, these commercial products typically use ethically sourced porcine or pig placenta. They're made in federally regulated facilities that are CGMP certified, that stands for Current Good Manufacturing Practices, which is a really strict quality standard set by the FDA. This guarantees you get a standardized, consistent dose. And, crucially, they are tested by independent third-party labs for safety and purity. This directly addresses the biggest risks of the traditional method, and of course, opens up the product to a way bigger audience.
Okay, so this new standardized approach sounds a lot safer, but does it actually do anything? Well, before you get to human trials, scientists look at preclinical data from animal studies to see if there's any measurable effect, and what they're finding is pretty interesting.
So take this 2019 study. Researchers were looking at aged mice. They gave one group a porcine placental extract and had another group as a control. The results were really clear. The mice that got the extract did significantly better on memory and learning tests. Other research has focused on skin health. In one study, they exposed hairless mice to UVB radiation to mimic sun damage. The group that also got the placental extract, they developed fewer wrinkles and they had way lower levels of the specific enzymes that are known to break down your skin's collagen.
And get this, the effects seem to go even deeper than the skin. A 2011 study looked at rats where they had chemically damaged their livers. The group that was treated with a placenta extract showed a huge reduction in liver fibrosis, that's basically scarring, by more than 50%. I mean, that suggests a really powerful regenerative effect at an organ level.
So with all this promising animal data, the next big challenge is, how do you turn that science into a product that consumers can actually trust? Let's take a look at how that happens.
The journey for the modern supplement is all about building trust through a process you can actually track and verify. It starts with ethical sourcing from inspected U.S. farms. Then, it's manufactured in a federally regulated, CGMP certified facility, which, again, means it's following strict FDA guidelines. And finally, before it ever gets to a shelf, the finished product is sent to an independent, ISO-accredited lab for testing to make sure it's pure and safe.
What this all boils down to is basically a triple check of quality. The CGMP certification means the manufacturing is up to FDA standards. ISO 17025 is the absolute gold standard for lab testing. And that third-party verification gives you unbiased proof that it's safe. When you put all that together, you get a level of safety and reliability that is just impossible to find in that unregulated DIY space. And because of that foundation of safety and quality, the market for this has completely changed. We're not just talking about postpartum recovery anymore. These supplements are now being marketed to the massive multi-billion-dollar beauty from within and anti-aging industries. They're targeting a much, much wider audience of both men and women who are looking for wellness solutions that have some real science behind them.
You know, this whole journey leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. The story of the placenta pill really shows this clear evolution. It goes from a deeply personal, belief-driven ritual to a risky, unregulated trend, and then finally to a standardized, scientifically vetted commercial product. And as we see this happen with more and more traditional remedies, it forces us all to ask a really important question. How do we navigate that delicate balance between respecting ancient beliefs and demanding modern scientific proof?